Our topic today is Igo Ofo, the secret ritual of Igbo justice, truth, and ancestral connection. Imagine waking up every morning and before you check your phone, before you eat breakfast, before you say a single word to another human being, you stand, face the rising sun, hold a sacred object in your hand, and speak directly to your ancestors. You thank them, you call on them, you align yourself with truth and justice before your day begins. This is not a metaphor. This is not a spiritual exercise from a self-help book. This is a living ancient practice called Igo Ofo, and it has been performed by the Igbo people of southern Nigeria for thousands of years. Today, we are going to explore what Igo Ofo is, what the Ofo object actually means, and why this practice carries such profound spiritual, social, and cosmic significance, not just for the Igbo, but for anyone who values truth, ancestry, and the invisible threads that connect the living to the dead. Who are the Igbos? Before we dive in a little context, the Igbos, sometimes felt Igbo, are one of the largest ethnic groups in Nigeria and in all of Africa, with a population of over 40 million people. They occupy the southern part of Nigeria in states like Anambra, Imo, Enugu, Abia, Rivers, and some other states. The Igbo have one of the richest and most complex traditional spiritual systems in the world, known as Ordinary, which roughly translates to the ways and customs of the land. Ordinary is not just a religion, it is a complete worldview, a philosophy of life, morality, governance, and cosmic order. At the very heart of Ordinary sits a practice and a symbol that the Igbo consider sacred above almost all else: the Ofo and the ritual of invoking it, Igo Ofo. What is the Ofo? Let's start with the object itself, because you cannot understand Igo Ofo without understanding what the Ofo is. The Ofo is a sacred staff or wand. Physically, it is a short, thick piece of wood, typically 6 to 7 inches long, carved from the branch of a tree called Deuterium elastica or Deuterium senegalensis. In Igbo, this tree itself is called the Ofo tree, and it is considered consecrated, set apart by God as a vessel of truth and justice. But here is the key. The Ofo is not just a piece of wood. Once it goes through a process of ritual consecration by the eldest title holder or chief priest in a community, it becomes a living spiritual instrument. It is the point where the physical world and the spiritual world meet. Scholar Chika Ifemisia defines the Ofo as a short, thick, portable, sacred wand, a symbol and guarantee of truth and justice. But that definition barely scratches the surface. Think of the Ofo the way a Christian might think of a cross, or the way a Muslim holds the Quran, or the way a judge's gavel represents the law. The Ofo is all of these things at once. It is a symbol of divine authority, a spiritual contract, a channel of prayer, and a weapon of moral accountability. In Igbo belief, the Ofo is described as a channel, a living link between the world of the living, the world of the ancestors, the dead, and the world of the unborn. It sits at the crossroad of all three dimensions of existence. There are different types of Ofo. Ofo Okpukpe, the personal Ofo inherited from one father, used for private prayers and rituals. Ofo Munna, the family or lineage Ofo, held by the eldest male, the Okpara, to represent the entire family before the ancestors. Ofo Obodo, the community Ofo, held by the Onyishi, the head of the community, to represent the entire town or village. Ofo Dibia, the spiritual practitioners Ofo, used by the healers and priests in their work. To possess an Ofo is not a right, it is earned. It is given to those who have demonstrated moral uprightness, lived truthfully, and earned the trust of both the living and the dead. As one Igbo proverb says, Ofo ga-egbu onye ụgha, which means the Ofo will kill a liar. What is Igo Ofo? Now that we have understood what the Ofo is, we can understand what Igo Ofo means. The word Igo in Igbo means to recite, to declare, or to invoke. So Igo Ofo literally means the invocation of the Ofo, the act of speaking through the sacred staff to call upon the ancestors align with truth, and commune with spiritual forces. In its most common everyday form, Igo Ofo is performed as a morning ritual called Igo Ofo, meaning morning Ofo prayer. It is performed at dawn, facing the east toward the rising sun. The east is deeply symbolic in Igbo cosmology. It is the direction of new beginnings, divine light, and the origin of life. During Igo Ofo, the holder of the Ofo, whether it is the father of a household, an elder, a titled man, or a priest, holds the Ofo firmly, sometimes stamps it on the ground and begins to speak. What do they say? They call out the names of the ancestors, going back through the generations. They announce themselves, who they are, who their fathers were, who their fathers' fathers were. They state their intentions for the day. They give thanks. They ask for protection, guidance, intercession of the ancestors with Chukwu, the supreme God, the source of all things. And here is what makes this extraordinary. This is not begging. This is not pleading or groveling. The one performing Igo Ofo stands in authority. They make declarations because in Igbo spiritual thoughts, the person holding the Ofo, if their hands are clean, if their life is aligned with the truth, stands not as a beggar before God, but as a child before their father, one who has the right to speak and be heard. The Igbo concept of Ogu is inseparable from Ofo. Ogu means innocence, moral uprightness, and clean conscience. You always hear them said together, Ofo no Ogu, truth and innocence. The full power of the Ofo is only available to those who carry Ogu, those who have lived with integrity. The spiritual significance of Igo Ofo. Let us now go deeper into the spiritual significance of Igo Ofo. First, it is a cosmic telephone. In Igbo cosmology, the ancestors are not dead in the Western sense. They are alive in another dimension, still deeply involved in the affairs of their families. Igo Ofo is the call that reaches them. When a family elder stands at dawn with the Ofo and calls the names of the departed, grandfather, great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather, those spirits are believed to hear. They are believed to gather, and they intercede on behalf of their living descendants with Chukwu and with the deities, the Arosi or Alosi, who govern different aspects of life. Some scholars have compared this to the Catholic practice of praying through saints. You do not go directly to God. You call on those who have already crossed over, who stand closer to the divine, and ask them to carry your prayers forward. The structure is remarkably similar. Second, it is a moral accountability system. When a person swears by the Ofo, they place themselves under divine scrutiny. If they are lying, if their hands are not clean, the Ofo becomes a source of judgment against them. This is why in traditional Igbo courts, oaths taken on the Ofo were considered the highest form of testimony. To swear falsely on the Ofo was not merely perjury, it was a spiritual death sentence. People feared the Ofo the way they feared God, because to them, the Ofo was the voice of God speaking through the ancestors. Third, it is a generational covenant. The Ofo is passed down from the father to the eldest son, the Okpara, upon death after the proper burial rites are completed. This passing is one of the most solemn moments in Igbo family life. It represents the transfer of spiritual authority, the continuation of a lineage covenant with its ancestors, and the acceptance of responsibility by the new head of family. It is considered a catastrophe, a terrible omen, if a man dies with no son to inherit his Ofo. The lineage spiritual protection is broken. Fourth, it is a declaration of identity. When you perform Igo Ofo and recite your genealogy, your father's name, your grandfather's name, going back generation by generation, you are not just reciting a list, you are asserting that you know where you come from. You are anchoring yourself in the chain of life. In a world that constantly tells Africans to forget their roots, to abandon their traditions, Igo Ofo is an act of radical remembrance. Igo Ofo in community and governance. The practice of Igo Ofo is not only personal, it is deeply communal. The Onyishi, the eldest man in a community, holds the community Ofo and performs Igo Ofo on behalf of all the people. When a new Onyishi is installed, one of the most important moments of his investiture is receiving the Ofo, the ritual known as Igo Ofo, the handing over of spiritual power. Without the Ofo, Onyishi is just an old man. With the Ofo, he becomes the spiritual representative of every living member of the community and every ancestor who ever lived in that community. Before major community decisions like going to war, making peace, resolving land disputes, sealing trade agreements, Igo Ofo was performed. Blood from sacrificial animals was sometimes rubbed on the Ofo to seal covenants. This made the covenant not merely a human agreement but a spiritual one, witnessed and enforced by the ancestors. In this way, the Ofo functioned as what the scholars have called the Igbo constitution. One researcher compared the Ofo's global equivalent to the ceremonial mace in parliaments around the world, the object that, when present, legitimizes authority and order. Without the mace, parliaments cannot sit. Without the Ofo, Igbo governance had no spiritual foundation. Igo Ofo today. In the modern world, what has happened to Igo Ofo? Colonialism and Christianity had a profound impact. Many Igbo families, upon converting to Christianity, locked their Ofo away in boxes or even destroyed them. The colonial narrative labeled Ofo worship as idol worship, primitive and dangerous. Many Onyishi, known as the community heads, who converted to Christianity during the 20th century, stopped performing the traditional investiture rituals, replacing them with church services. And yet, Igo Ofo had not died. Across Igbo land today, thousands of families, Christian, traditional, and those who blend both still practice some form of morning prayer in the tradition of Igo Ofo Otutu. Many younger Igbo people, part of a global wave of African cultural revival, are returning to Omenala with fresh eyes, reclaiming these practices as sacred, not primitive. Contemporary spiritual practitioners describe Igo Ofo as essentially a form of ancestral meditation, a daily discipline of grounding, gratitude, and divine alignment. They point out that its core element, facing the east, reciting affirmations, communing with higher forces, declaring your intentions with confidence, parallel practices found in yoga, Buddhism, and modern mindfulness traditions. The wisdom was always there. The world just needed time to catch up. In conclusion, so what is Igo Ofo? It is a morning prayer and a cosmic declaration. It is a sacred staff that holds the weight of generations. It is the voice of the living calling to the ancestors and the answer that comes back in the form of protection, wisdom, and purpose. It is a system of justice that predates written law. It is a technology of the spirit that has kept Igbo families, communities, and culture alive through slavery, colonialism, and modernization. And perhaps most powerfully, it is a reminder that you are not alone, that behind you stands a long line of people who lived, who struggled, who loved, and who passed something on to you. And the least you can do every morning before the noise of the world begins is turn east, lift what you have been given, and remember their names. Ofonogu, Demma, to live with truth and innocence is the highest good. Thank you. Dalono.